Hello and welcome to Pathways, where you are invited to join me with leaders in personal development and cultural evolution. This is your host, Paul O'Brien. As today's guest will show us, in the blink of an eye, we can all make a difference. What does it take to start projects that will generate positive change? Goodness is possible when a single person, regardless of their age, takes action to help another and in the process changes the lives of hundreds. Our guest today is Maggie Doyne, author of the book Between the Mountain and the Sky, a mother's story of love, loss, healing, and hope. Maggie has dedicated her life to educating children and empowering women. At age 19, she used her life savings, mainly accumulated from babysitting, to build a home for orphaned children in war-ravaged Nepal. She was named 2015 CNN Hero of the Year. She was honored by the Dalai Lama as an unsung hero of compassion. Her work was championed by Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Nicholas Kristof in a cover story for the New York Times Magazine. While Maggie's work is focused on Nepal, she speaks all over the world in the hope of inspiring others to start projects of their own that will generate positive change. Hello, Maggie, and welcome to the Pathways Show.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Okay, let's start by asking the obvious question. How did you end up in Nepal at the age of 19 and opened an orphanage?
Well, it was completely happenstance. I did not intend to travel even. I was a kid from suburban New Jersey destined for college. I thought that that's what success would look like. And then at the last minute, I was like, wait a second, I've never really left New Jersey. I don't really know what my purpose is. I don't know what I want to be. I'm 18 years old. I want to travel and see the world first. And, lots of learning and cultural immersion and adventure. Later, I ended up becoming entrenched in the Nepali community living in northeastern India. And with a friend, my Nepali friend, we decided to go back to her village. And it was there that I went on a journey to Nepal, fell in love with the culture, the people, the country, and also saw an opportunity to do something. And so I stayed, and I have been living in Nepal and working alongside an incredible team of Nepali friends and family for 17 years.
And it's a pretty good story about how you sort of became inspired by walking past this little girl, 5 or 7 years old, who's breaking rocks, and she was like the first child that you more or less adopted.
Yeah, so I was walking across a dry riverbed and children were breaking rocks, and I was like, why are these kids breaking rocks? Like, it just didn't make any sense. And they'd be there all the time with mallets breaking rocks into gravel. And I found out that the children were selling the rocks for about $1. They were child laborers. And so I started to ask the question about how I could help, what help would look like, and if there was something I could do to help little girls who looked just like me, except were born in a different place and a different time. And that led me to Hema, who said namaste and hello. And I started to learn and ask questions and work with the local community. And the first part of our journey was putting children into school. But then we kind of realized that to get to the neediest of the needy and the most vulnerable, we also needed a home base and a full service program for orphan children who didn't have family or home support. And that kind of became the future and the home and the school, and we've expanded ever since. But yeah, everything started with Hema and her smile and her namaste, and from one kid it became 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then more and more.
And you had saved up like $5,000 for your college education, and you asked your parents to send it to you so that you could help these kids.
That's right. I had some college savings from being a babysitter, and there was a piece of land for sale for $5,000. And that's what I had in my bank account. And so that was the very first sort of investment that I made with my co-founder. At that point, we had all come together as a team, and my co-founder Tope was an orphan himself, and decided to come back as well from India, as where he was working. And we started a community-based organization serving children. And the first piece of land just had like a little dirt patch and one tree on it, but it would soon become a home. And we used the word home very intentionally. We painted the walls bright yellow, and there was a swing set and a soccer ball and puppies and kites in the sky, and always food on the stove around, and meals around a table, and music and dance, and just like really set out intentionally to create a loving family, a loving home.
Right.
Yeah.
You say, even though the first news articles referred to Copila Valley, which was what you called your place, they described it as an orphanage, but you say it's not an orphanage, it was a home, and that we are a family. And this makes me wonder about you on a personal level. You must have one incredibly strong maternal instinct, because I know there's the word mother in the subtitle of your book, and you talk about being a mother long before you actually had your own biological child towards the end of the book. Is that true? I mean, do you like have this like here's a 19-year-old girl with this incredible maternal instinct?
I would say, yeah. Like I had been a babysitter since the time I was 11. I knew I loved children. I knew that on that journey of kind of trying to understand myself, I knew that I really wanted to be surrounded by kids. And then I had a knack for it. Not to say I was perfect. I had to learn a lot. I had to read a lot of books. I had to, make sure I had a team around me too. But and I didn't set out to be like, I'm going to be the mom of these children. It also kind of happened very organically, and after lots of tuck-ins and just taking care of each other, like, and it became a home, became a family. I became a mom, and it just all really unwound from there.
At one point in the book, you say, I'm the mother figure to 54 children, sister to half dozen aunties and uncles, and a mama to our biological daughter. Is that the current situation now? I mean, where are you at now? Are you?
Oh, I think we have like 8 more kids who have come into the home in the last year. Mm-hmm. It's always complicated, when a child comes into the home, it's because something terribly tragic has happened. So it's hard not to have mixed feelings about it. But we do try to be that place where a child can come and heal and have another shot at a family and a home and safety and security. And yeah, we've had quite a few new babies coming into the home, and little kiddos this past year. So we continue to grow. We also have 25 kids in college. So as the older kids kind of transition and go on to college and jobs and vocational skills, we have new babies coming in.
It's amazing to me to read the story and to sort of witness how resilient these children are, because some of them had the most horrific things to recover from. Do you think that children of a third world country like that, where they're just born into poverty and hardship, have better capacity for recovery, for resilience than children from America?
No, I don't. I think the human spirit is, all humans have the capacity for resilience. I think, the purpose and a huge part of just being a human is that we suffer. Unfortunately, there's a lot of inequality in who suffers and how and when. And but no, I don't think, maybe one kind of human is in one part of the world has more resilience or grit than another. I just think we have to find a way as a human family to work together so that children have their most basic human rights and needs met, and make sure that these atrocities don't happen, and that every child has an opportunity to be safe and have access to quality education, because we're all so interrelated and connected. And to think that anywhere we are, children aren't being raised in a safe, loving environment and having a childhood, to think that there's not a consequence to that would be living a very disillusioned reality. And we believe that when we see poverty and violence cycling around in this world, there's a direct correlation to us not figuring out how to take care of each other and take care of children, our most precious, innocent, pure, sacred human beings on this planet. So that's really what our mission is about. We do that in a rural part of Nepal, and the kids are amazing. And we've kind of learned slowly and organically through programming, through social work, through counseling services, through meals and nutrition and outdoor play and love, how any child can thrive and grow in a community. And we lift up that child and we lift up that community together with the community itself. So that's really essential to the work that we do.
And what were some of the hardest things during those early days when you were trying to make a difference for the children in Surkhet? Surkhet was the name of the district, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that one of the biggest themes in the book is figuring out my role, my own personal role as, someone from New Jersey and someone young and someone who didn't look or come from that culture, and navigating the culture, wanting to be respectful, wanting to learn, wanting to immerse myself. And at the same time, there was a lot of issues under the guise of culture, and trying to work together to determine how we bring about change and, healing from civil war, and work together. So I think, language was difficult, understanding the culture, understanding how to bring about change. I think a lot of loss. I had this narrative in the beginning that I could go in and we could just help everyone. And very soon I realized that no, not everyone could be helped. And I failed over and over again and had so many losses. And there was a lot of learning that took place, especially in those early years.
In the book, there's some stories of at least one girl who was sold into marriage. And I guess that's kind of like a standard traditional thing to do. A girl gets to be 13 or 14, and then you find a husband for her who's willing to give you a dowry, and it's sort of like you sell your daughters off. Is that common? Or, I mean, it's seem you get the impression that that's kind of a cultural pattern. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say it's seen. It's something that human rights activists are working to change, and women themselves are reclaiming agency over that choice. But it's very, very layered, very complicated, very gray, and there are cultural implications. And figuring that out, figuring out how we create change around that, and how we uphold women and girls of higher value was a huge part of the journey. And part of that is education, keeping kids in school, keeping girls in school, investing in them, believing in them. And then we also create a women's center to raise awareness around the issues and around women and girls understanding human rights and how they could self-advocate, how they could create vocational skills, a safe space where women could learn and come together, discuss, build strength amongst each other, build community. So yeah, those stories of girls and women are definitely woven beautifully throughout the book, and very happy, sometimes tragic, but always a lot of change and learning involved.
How did you keep going? I mean, talk about tragic. I mean, some of the stuff that you had to deal with was beyond tragic. And how did what kept you motivated and going strong in the face of just intractable uh, patterns and problems of abuse and exploitation of children and women. Um, how did you
I mean, yeah.
how
For
did you do that?
for every setback, we were making incredible advances. And um, I think before I had the opportunity to write the book, there was this narrative of like shiny, happy stories and all of the surface and everything we put on social media and in our annual report and on our website. So this was a chance to kind of talk about the complexities, the loss, and the hard things. So yeah, there was definitely a lot. I think um, I had my own grappling with resilience and how to come back after really hard things happen and getting hit with grief and trauma and just love can be a really beautiful thing. And my love for my children, I think, is what makes loss so incredibly difficult, but it also is just the thing that anchored me into life and helped me believe in them and in our family, and ultimately make the decision um, to like keep going every single day, every single year. Even though things were hard and there were plenty of times I wanted to quit, I was also just surrounded by a beautiful, amazing, incredible, loving team. And that's, I mean, the secret sauce of it all, why we're still here, why we're still doing good work in the world, why we're still a place for children to come is because it isn't just me at all. It's a whole team of people. So
You write in
it's
the
been,
book about how in some moments at night you would be underneath the mosquito net and quote, placing my hand on my heart and imagining that I'm far away in a decent neighborhood with a car that works, in a life with less responsibility, more time, and a decent man who loves me. This sounds agonizing to have, to be away from all of that. Um, what a sacrifice you made.
yeah, I mean, for every sacrifice, I think I had a lot of joy and a lot of fun and a lot of good things too. And I'd rather be living a life of purpose and trying to believe that our world can be better than not, like I'd rather give it all a shot than just give up and not do anything at all. I think we have to believe that change is possible.
Did you
And
ever,
no one gets a free pass at not suffering or not experiencing loss. So I've had my fair share very young because of the path that I chose. But I've also had my fair share of incredible life experiences and love and joy and laughter and a huge family. So
did you ever feel conflicted about your work in Nepal?
so many times, so many times. There was so many points of conflict. Um, like, what am I even doing? And is this the right thing to intervene on this issue? And how do we do this? And is it my place? And how do I do this work ethically and conscientiously? And how do we bring everyone along with us for the ride, and culture and the complexities of it? So much conflict, so much questioning. Every time we had a failure, it would just be like, what are we even doing? And yeah, we kept going, we kept believing, and certainly lives were changed for the better, and we never gave up.
You write, colonialism with a good heart is still colonialism.
Yeah.
Were you conflicted about, okay, like you're celebrating Christmas with these kids. Now, this is a Buddhist country, right? Why did you do that? Why did you introduce them to this Christian holiday?
Well, the kids are all religions. We have Hindus, we have Buddhists, we have Muslims, we have very few Christians. Um, and our intentions as a family was to celebrate and kind of understand culture and holidays and festivals. So we celebrate everything. The kids learned about Hanukkah and they've learned about the Dalai Lama. They've learned about Halloween. And we also celebrate Dasai and Tihar and Shivratri. So yeah, I think I kind of just believe in exposing children to cultures and ideas and languages and human values and learning of history. But our kids are predominantly Hindu and Buddhist. We go to temple. We read passages from Bhagavad Gita and the religious texts. I think we're careful about not shoving any one religion or philosophy or way of life down anyone's, they have to find that way for themselves. That's the way that I was raised, in a very open-minded light of just understanding and exploring my own belief systems and spiritual practices, or not, or lack thereof. So we're doing the same thing in different ways, and just figuring it out as we go, like you do when you parent. But yeah, our curriculum exposes them to all kinds of learning, but we tend to steer away from any one religious,
Right. Okay.
Story.
Now, a lot of people will read the story and be struck by your experience with grief and the long process of recovery. I mean, there was so much grieving in this book. There's so much loss to be dealt with, and as you say, it's offset by joyful experiences, etc. So what was important to you about sharing this story? I mean, you write, grief is a horrible luxury afforded only to the privileged, and I don't deny myself. So what do you mean by that? Grief for the poor people, they don't have time for it, or is that what you mean?
Well, I think I wrote that passage with some guilt that I was experiencing when I had my loss and I lost my son. I had therapy, I had help. I was literally flown to the US for treatments. And that is a luxury. And I really struggled with the fact that Nepali women in my same place would have to get up the next day, the next week, and chop firewood and care for children and get to work farming. So it was a reflection on what your privilege allows, what your access to support allows. Mental health and the time to grieve, bereavement isn't given to, so many people in the world who are living hand to mouth and trying to survive day in and day out. So I had a lot of guilt going through that experience. I had a lot of guilt during my pregnancy when I flew back to North America to give birth. So I just tried to write about everything really honestly. And the reason why I wrote about grief was because at the end of the day, this was a book that I wanted to hand over to my children. And ultimately, everyone's going to grieve. And I wanted to share that I could keep loving and I could keep having hope, and that there was still joy and there was healing, and kind of share the things that were helpful to me on that journey and pass it on to anyone else who would ultimately go through something like that.
Now, you have this foundation called the Blink Now Foundation. Why that name, and what does it do?
It's about changing the world in the blink of an eye, and we work in Nepal to empower Nepal's children. We have a vision of a world that can change in the blink of an eye when we all come together in generosity and love and hope for children and creating a better world. So we're blinknow.org, the Blink Now Foundation.
Blinknow.org. And I imagine that people can go there and make a donation to your cause.
Yes, please go. You can join up for Roots and make a monthly gift. You can make a one-time gift. Every single dollar is converted into immediate and impact and change on the ground in Nepal, and makes a huge difference for us.
Well, you've made a huge difference by writing your book and by bringing it to the world. What's the long game for the Kopila Valley School?
We are still a place where children in need can come every day. Um, so we'll continue to serve as that place, raising children and educating children in Circuit. Our longer term game is also to create open source blueprints of our work and our models and our curriculum and share it with others who want to do this work conscientiously and ethically and in partnership with local community.
And first, you start out as a babysitter in high school, step one, and then take it from there. Hey, Maggie, it's been a delight talking with you today. I wish we had more time, but we're pretty much out. And I just want to thank you for everything,
Thank you.
for being on the show, but also for doing what you're doing and for writing a wonderful book, a really heartfelt book. I enjoyed it. And I hope all of our listeners read it. And I hope they look at blinknow.org and make a donation. The work you're doing is so incredibly inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for those who may have tuned in to the Pathway Show late, this is your host, Paul O'Brien, author of Intuitive Intelligence, a book that shares the theme of pathways, which is personal and cultural evolution. Now, don't worry, you can play and or share this interview whenever you want via the internet or free podcast, and I'll tell you how in a minute. Today, we've been visiting with Maggie Doyne, author of Between the Mountain and the Sky, a mother's story of love, loss, healing, and hope. And I want to say thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into Pathways, which is broadcast and streamed on the internet at www.kboo.fm every other Sunday morning at 8:30 USA Pacific Time. And even better, podcasts of today's show, which you can listen to and forward to others, are available for free at divination.com. That's spelled DIVInation.com, as well as via iTunes, my YouTube channel, and other free podcast servers. This is Paul O'Brien, reminding you to tell your friends about Pathways Radio and podcasts. And thanks again to Maggie Doyne and to all of you listeners for tuning in and being a part of the Pathways Conversations.